Hi, this is Lisa from Monarch Butterfly Land Saving Society. I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of the growing deserts on the planet and basically the definition of desert. The definition of a desert is a place where vegetation doesn't grow, and those include the polar ice regions, the Arctic and Antarctica. It includes the urban areas, the concrete cities, and obviously it includes the hot and cold deserts where there is barren soils and where vegetation is not prevalent. One of the major reasons that there's so much desert on the planet, I thought it was about deforestation and cutting down trees so that there could be products that people need, because so much comes from trees, like medicines and plastic and asphalt and resin and rubber, an incredible amount of products. And that is a big reason why there are growing deserts, because people are taking down the trees. But I think the main reason that they take down the trees is to increase the number of acres on the earth where people can grow food and where people can farm and cultivate the land. So what's happening is that people are taking down trees where huge ecosystems live and where huge numbers of products that are needed for the earth, from energy to all kinds of things that we use. And they're taking down the trees to basically put in place farmlands where they can graze animals and grow food for the growing number of people on the planet who need food. The problem with that is then, instead of a wild earth, we're having a completely man-controlled, cultivated earth. And while it may seem that it's important for food, it knocks out the forests, which are important for purveying to the life on this planet so much of what it needs, including energy. The energy comes from the sun. It intermingles with our green plant life in photosynthesis. That's where we get energy in every form. If we cut down the trees, we are going to ruin our chances of having energy. Without energy, we don't have the work capability in every aspect of the earth to produce all the different things we need. Energy is the first and most important product that we need on the planet. It comes from the sun. The sun intermingles with the plants, the green, and from that everything is born. If we cut down all the forests to grow food, and we only think of food, we'll eventually be dead because we'll have less and less energy. We know that our air conditioning doesn't work as well as it used to work. When forests were prevalent, the air conditioning could be incredibly cold, and everything was you can see the difference now. When you turn on the air conditioning, things are very sluggish. It's because of deforestation. The huge trees are wells of water, and the water is integral to cellulose, the green in the plants, and cellulose and the water are very important to the process of photosynthesis, where the rays of the sun intermingle with H2O, which is our essence of our planet. And without all that happening, the energy level or production of energy on the planet is so much less. Food sustainability is impossible without energy. So it makes no sense to cut down all the trees, create farmlands where we can all be sure we're going to have something to eat, if we're ruining our energy. Energy is what gives us the ability to get up and move and do our work, and it's the same with the trees and the plants and the fish and the animals, and everything on earth needs energy to move. Natural energy to keep our bodies going, and then energy obviously to keep our workplaces going and machinery running and cars going and things like that, and our air conditioning cooling and our computers going. So people who cut down trees and then create huge forests so they can grow food are really ruining the life of the planet. The food may last and seem plentiful for a while, but eventually without energy it makes no sense to have all that food. I think the reason people want to grow so much food is that there are areas of the planet that are suffering and starving, and that may be due to people in the past having come in and ruined their soil so that they can dig in and find gold and deposits of minerals and ivory and oil and all kinds of things, and the earth's soil has become barren in so many places due to rampant what they call stock market mentality, expansionism, where people want more and more and more fruits of the insides of the earth, and have then created mine after mine to bring up steel and metals and oil and gold and things like that. And so when the soils in the southern, very much the southern hemispheres, have become depleted, and no food would grow there, they had to cultivate farmlands probably elsewhere to make up for the lack of food on the planet for the areas that were devastated. So not only were the areas that might have been plentiful with trees and all kinds of wildlife and plants knocked out in the past when colonialism and slavery and the running into the southern hemispheres to rip apart their resources to bring to the north were prevalent, but now there's huge amounts of deforestation, I think, to create places where the food can be grown to make up for that, where people are starving. But it makes no sense to cut down trees because then there'll be no energy, and that's going to end up killing us all. Maybe some people really, in a way, are on a suicide mission because of what's happened with colonialism ripping apart the southern hemisphere. In a way, maybe they're just trying to destroy the whole planet. It seems that way in some way, because to cut down the trees where photosynthesis takes place is almost the most foolish thing to do, and it's common knowledge how important the trees are. I would think that growing food is not as important as keeping the forests up, and that people should think of other ways to sustain food growth on the planet. And to do, the soil must always rest. If you force food to grow where it was once, say, a forest, eventually the soil will get tired, and you've got to let it rest, and it needs a long winter to regenerate and hibernate. And the things that suffer throughout this all the most are the insects, the fish, and the animals, because the fish and the animals forage in the wild part of the earth, which is becoming less and less prevalent. And with the cities and the farmlands and the barren areas and the deserts and the polar regions, the animals are hard put to find any place to find food for themselves. And if we keep ripping up the forests where they live and find their food and all the vegetation in other areas that they find food, and then in favor of that grow our own food, and put pesticides on it so they can't eat of that food, the animals and insects, which are very important to cleansing the soil and procreating the seeds and knowing what to do to keep the ecosystems going, will just die. So not only will we lose the energy that's necessary for the trees, with the trees, interaction with them to keep going, and we'll lose the animal kingdom because we don't allow them to eat our food. We put pesticides on it, and we're ripping the earth up every minute to grow more food than maybe we need. Our food supermarkets on every corner in every town are brimming with so much food. It's almost an anomaly. Why is there so much food in every town if you consider every supermarket shelf in every single town, and how much is there every day and how much is there every time you go in? Where does it all go? It doesn't seem to ever deplete. It just keeps coming out of the earth, and yet the animals are being extinct, the deserts are growing, the trees are coming down, and eventually this big phantasma of food in all our supermarkets may come to an end, and people have to consider all the fruits of the earth coming up to meet the needs of the growing and overpopulated population of man. But what's happening with the animals and the insects and the birds and the bees, which are so important? It's almost up to man now to turn around and use the food from the supermarkets and feed the animal kingdom, but then they become more and more domesticated. In a sense, their instincts need to be in place, and they need to be living in the wilds to keep our earth going the way it needs to be. It's a wild planet, and it shouldn't be a totally cultivated planet. I think the overpopulation of the human race may be something that is, if unchecked, will cause incredible devastation, because I don't think the earth is necessarily supposed to be 100% cultivated for man. It should be left a decent amount of it, at least 50% cultivate wild for the animals. And what people need to talk about is how to keep the forests coming and then to be left alone, to never be taken down again, how the farmlands have to be curtailed and enough food has to be cultivated somehow without ripping up the earth even more, how the areas that were traditionally ripped up, especially Africa, and now we're seeing Australia and of course South America, how those parts can be regenerated. And the only way is with the animal kingdom, and the animals need energy, and it's just a vicious cycle. The thing to do is to consider the animals, the insects, and the pollinators who know how to put the earth back together, and the needs of energy for all life to keep moving and do the work to keep the planet going. And I hope that people will consider that overpopulation is a bad thing, and people might start writing and speaking about the need to consider not necessarily having or having some rules in place in their families as far as that, and also not going into the forest anymore and cutting down the trees, which we need for energy, and also figuring out how to grow food for everyone. But there really seems to be, in my mind, no problem with food. We talk about food sustainability, but when you look at all the supermarkets in every corner of the world brimming with food, or at least the rich part of the world, I guess maybe the poor parts of the world don't have that, then it doesn't seem like food sustainability is a problem. So people need to conserve more and not bring up so many fruits and vegetables and grow so much. They need to let the farmlands become wildlands in many places and let the energy come back. Those lands will be much more valuable price-wise if the wild earth is back as opposed to the cultivated earth. And I don't think we need to have all that food in the supermarkets. It should be in the earth. And I think part of my program of feeding and strengthening the animal kingdom is to go to the supermarkets with, I hope to get an IRS-sanctioned nonprofit status and get donations of food from the supermarkets every month, if not every week, and then use it to cultivate the wildlife and give it back to the earth, because all seed, fruits, and vegetables can be used to feed birds and bees and butterflies and gophers, and it should be taken to the wildlife sanctuaries, especially where there are forest fires, and food should be put down there so the animals can come back and procreate the land and bring back the soil and strengthen our forests and bring back our possibility of always having enough energy on the planet. And then I would think that something should be thought about halting all the growing farmlands as opposed to the wild earth, which is the part that's being threatened. That's my opinion, and it does seem dire and negative, but if people think about it and put their prayers into that kind of thing, maybe it will change. Thank you.